Some of the best films we've ever seen happen to be based on a true story. But I know what you're thinking. Movies that say they are based on a true story usually aren't, and they just went all Hollywood on us and stretch the truth. I don't blame you for thinking that, but let's not discredit the ones that really are based on a true story. I'm your host Joss, and today on Top 10 Beyond the Screen, I'm going to be counting down 10 movies that are actually based on real disturbing stories. If you like what we do, make sure you give us a follow on social media. Our links are down below, and chill with me until the end of this video to catch the blooper reel and comment shoutouts. But for now, let's jump into our list. Beginning our countdown at number 10 is BACKCOUNTRY. The movie came out back in 2014 and told the story of a couple named Jen and Alex who leave the city to go camping in the country. They get settled in the woods and realize they forgot their phones, and they soon become lost. Their vacation quickly turns into a fight for survival after they get stalked by this man-eating bear. This is literally every camper's biggest fear, approaching a bear on your trip. The movie was based on a true story of a real couple who was attacked by a bear while camping in northern Ontario 10 years prior to the film. The girlfriend was mauled to death and passed away in their canoe as the boyfriend was trying to get them to some help after fighting off the bear with a knife. The director of the movie, Adam McDonald, spoke about the true story, saying, "I thought about them a lot, the real couple, when I was shooting. It was a tragic, heroic, and extremely emotional story, so I wanted to feel that in the movie constantly. That's what I went for." I've actually seen this movie and I can confirm that he succeeded. And at number 9 is The Hills Have Eyes. Some of you probably didn't realize this was based off of true events, and now I just ruined your day. The original 1977 movie told the story of a family who gets stranded in the Nevada desert after their car breaks down and they run into a family of killer mutants. Turns out this story is based off of the 15th century legend of a man named Alexander Bean, also known as Sonny. He was known to have 14 children and 32 grandchildren, most of which were products of incest. They all lived in a cave in the Nevada desert and emerged at night to rob and murder travelers whose bodies they would use as their food source. After 25 years of people going missing in the desert and random body parts started washing up on the shore nearby, it was reported that it took 400 men and a huge gang of bloodhounds to track down everyone in the family. Coming in at number 8 is The Whistleblower. The movie came out in 2010 and told the story of a police officer named Kathy who gets recruited by the UN as part of the peacekeeping force after the war in Bosnia. She ends up uncovering this huge sex trafficking operation which the UN wanted to ignore because some of their members were actually involved in it. She gets fired but then brings her side of the story to the BBC and won a wrongful termination lawsuit. Girl power. The movie plot is based on the real story of Kathy Bulkovic. The filmmakers had to tone down some details of the actual case, but it does keep a lot of graphic details of what some of the women went through in the operation. One scene is incredibly hard to watch. A woman tries to escape the trafficking operation and she's raped with a lead pipe. The director of the movie wanted to expose this wrongful behavior and had no issues doing so. She said, "Is this an effort to shame publicly? Yes. There is no excuse for any international government, the United Nations, the US State Department, or any other private contractor to engage in, encourage, or cover up such activity. Let's face it, that's what happened." So if you guys actually want to learn more about this case, watch the movie. In spot number 7 on our list is A Nightmare on Elm Street. The 1984 movie was inspired by true events, but the director, Wes Craven, didn't market it like that for a reason. An obvious one, really. No one would have believed that a badly burned and clawed boogeyman type person would be based off of someone real. But when the movie came out and claimed that it was based on true events, it wasn't lying. Wes Craven wrote the script for the movie after he read an LA Times article about a teenage boy who was suffering from nightmares that kept him so desperate to stay awake. It was such a severe case of night terrors that he ended up dying in his sleep one night. Wes gathered information from the case and what his nightmares consisted of, and that is where the Freddy Krueger villain and story came from. He spoke on it saying, "He told his parents he was afraid that if he slept, the thing chasing him would get him, so he tried to stay awake for days at a time. When he finally fell asleep, his parents thought this crisis was over. They had heard screams in the middle of the night. By the time they got to him, he was dead. He died in the middle of the nightmare. Here was a youngster having a vision of a horror that everyone older was denying. That became the central line of Nightmare on Elm Street." The Fatal Nightmare ended up being one of the best horror movies of all time, which is kind of a creepy thought in itself. Next up at number 6 is the movie Hard Candy. The 2005 movie focuses on a tough subject that unfortunately happens in our world all the time. It tells the story of a teenager named Haley who goes off to a coffee shop to meet Jeff, a photographer that she met on the internet. But Haley set it up as part of her plan because she knew that he preys on teenage girls and sexually assaults them. So she ends up drugging him and then ties him up and tries to force a confession out of him that she can give to the cops. The director, David Slade, got inspiration for his movie from a real news story about several Japanese girls who use their innocence to trap predators. They would find them online and then convince them to meet them at a hotel room, and then they would beat them, rob them, and then try and get them to confess. But the actor who played Jeff, Patrick Wilson, has made it clear that the movie isn't supposed to be a pedophile movie. It's supposed to show the power struggle between the two of them. Regardless, the movie was made back in 2005, but it is still incredibly relatable and relevant right now, which isn't really a good thing. Halfway through the list, at number 5 is Boys Don't Cry. The 1999 movie has gone down in history for its push the envelope storyline. The movie follows a man named Brandon Tina who identifies as male and becomes romantically involved with a single mother named Lana. But he lies to her about his troubled past and sex change. The movie is based on the real life story of a trans man named Brandon Tina who gets murdered at the hands of his own friends who didn't know that he was trans. The movie is hard to sit through because the case was so graphic and heart-wrenching. It's meant to show the hate crimes that the LGBTQ community has to face sometimes, and unfortunately it tells a real story which ended with someone losing their life. Hilary Swank took on the role of Brandon and she took home an Oscar for Best Actress for her incredible performance. Very much deserved. Here we are at number 4 with the iconic movie Psycho. It's no secret anymore that this movie was based on a real story, and throughout the years we've heard it be told in a variety of different ways, from Psycho, Bates Motel, Silence of the Lambs, and American Horror Story. The 1960 movie was inspired by a real serial killer named Ed Gein. He was a convicted murderer who committed his crimes in Plainfield, Wisconsin. Not only would he kill people, but he also snatched corpses from local graveyards and fashioned them as trophies and keepsakes from their bodies and bones. He ended up confessing to killing 2 women, but he was initially found unfit to stand trial and they confined him to a mental health facility. He ended up being deemed as legally insane, and officials thought it was because of his mother, Augusta, because she sealed him off from the rest of the world for the majority of his life. So once she died, he started to identify as a woman and would cross-dress and use the flesh from his female victims to create a skin bodysuit for himself. So yes, the movie is based on a real story, and all I have to say is please be careful with how you raise your children. In our third spot is Amityville Horror. The movie, as well as all the remakes, were based on one of the biggest supernatural haunting cases of all time, all coming from a legendary house in New York. The movie told the story of a man who murdered his family in the house, and then when a family moves into it years later, they are haunted by an evil spirit. The murder case is actually a real story. On November 13th, 1974, a man named Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family at 112 Ocean Avenue, a house located in a suburban neighborhood in Amityville. The good news is he was convicted for his murders, but the legend goes that his crimes left behind a very dark presence. In December of 1975, a real couple named George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house with their 3 children. After only 28 days, the family left the house and claimed that they were terrorized by an evil spirit. And from this real life story came an iconic movie series. Moving on to our number 2 spot is The Girl Next Door, and no, I am not talking about the 2004 comedy Movie. This movie was based on Jack Ketchum's novel, which was inspired by the tragic story of a real girl named Sylvia Likens. She was just 16 years old when she was murdered in Indiana back in October of 1965. She was held captive by her own caregiver and was abused and tortured for almost 3 months before she died due to her injuries. The caregiver, Gertrude Baniszewski, brutally tortured her with the help of her own children and other people in their neighborhood. They were all put on trial and convicted for the crime. The Indianapolis Police Department called it the most sadistic case they'd ever investigated at the time, and most people would agree that the movie did it justice. The movie came out in 2007, and the man himself, Stephen King, had nothing but good things to say about it. He said, I quote, "If you are easily disturbed, you should not watch this movie. If, on the other hand, you are prepared for a long look into hell, The Girl Next Door will not disappoint. It's the first authentically shocking American film I've seen in over 20 years." If Stephen King gives it a review like that, you know that it is worth watching. In our number 1 spot is the legendary movie The Exorcist. It's been given the title of the best horror movie of all all time, and it has an Oscar nomination to back that up to some extent. The director of the 1973 movie, William Friedkin, made the adaptation of Peter Blatty's novel. It was inspired by the actual exorcism of a 14-year-old boy named Roland Doe in a St. Louis hospital. He wanted to use a more fictionalized approach and changed it to a 12-year-old girl instead, rather than exposing the actual case. The real story comes from the late 1940s when priests from a Roman Catholic church in the US performed a series of exorcisms on Roland and documented them. This is basically what you see in The Exorcist, but the main character was changed and it took a more modern approach for the time that it was released. It's actually the movie, in my opinion, that set the standards for every other exorcism movie to follow, but people were throwing up and feigning the theater at the premiere. So, what does that say? Well, there you have it, guys. That is our top 10 countdown. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking and feeling, and give it a thumbs up so that I know you enjoyed it. For now, let's take a look at some comments from some of my other videos. Emma Dingwall says, I'm starting to get addicted to your videos. They're amazing. That is what I like to hear, Emma. Thank you. Andrew Carey Sr. says, Joss, will you marry me? No, but I appreciate the offer. Gavin Siddharth says, what are you, warm? A fuzzy something? It's a scarf, and yes, I'm warm. You should see the snowstorm we were hit with here in Toronto, okay? You'd be wearing a scarf too. Yeah, right, 57 says, seriously, why did you waste your time doing a video about this man baby? He is such an embarrassment. Now, I knew some people wouldn't like a Trump video. It's all for fun, you guys. Nothing to get all serious about. Alright guys, I'm getting out of here. Show us some love and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I will see you in the next video, but until then, here are some bloopers for you to laugh at. Every day. The director of the 1973 movie, is it Friedkin or Friedkin? You would know. Friedkin. Aha!
It's also Craven, right? Not Craven? Yeah, Craven. And she said Craven, people made fun of her, right?
I did. He corrected me. Friedkin, right? Friedkin? Friedkin. I got a feeling. Do you know what I'm singing though? What song I'm thinking of? Hopefully that's right. Sounds good though. Nah, shut up. You leave it. You let me be. I keep that. Okay, my snot. Real cute. I'm so cute. Okay, freaking rude over there. Oh, tell him. Is that believable?
Kind of.
Would you be scared?
A little bit. Now, yeah.
Now are you scared?
No.
Wait, I haven't flexed yet.
Now.
Now are you scared? Yeah, I bet. Time. Okay, freaking rude. Hammering the wall. I'm pissed. Yeah, keep going, man. It's not happening in here.